because our bodies don't lie. Once you start using your brain, it's all over. Your ego, your brain is going to override your intuition every time because you're used to this. This is how most people operate and function. So I always like to say when you are coming into this high stakes, move it down. Move the energy down into your heart, into your gut, whatever feels right for you, and really lean into the feeling of that decision. Does that feel like a heck yes, or does that feel like a heck no? Or does it feel somewhere in between? Because that means it's not a heck yes, right? And that means that maybe you need to do a little bit more waiting and not making a decision yet. And so I really push people to move it down into their body and see how it feels. The right aligned decisions feel calm. They don't scream, they don't have giant freak out moments. They don't have a lot of energy or emotions associated with it. Intuitive moments feel quiet, they feel calm, they feel in flow.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of To Hum is Human, the podcast where we explore the transformative power of tuning into our intuition to express our passionate purpose. I'm your host, Donnabelle, and today we will explore how to navigate change, really how our intuition helps you adapt, because following our inner guidance can help us embrace change, whether it's a career shift, personal growth, or a major life transition. I am thrilled to introduce today's guest. Nicole Pope is a former Fortune 500 executive who bridges analytical expertise with spiritual wisdom. She's an Akashic and shamanic evidential medium. In addition, Nicole guides clients as a soul alignment mentor and consulting with spirit business strategist. Through her podcast, Empower Your Soul, and personalized sessions, Nicole helps clients access their intuitive wisdom while implementing practical tools for clarity, alignment, and renewed purpose. Welcome, Nicole.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Donnabelle. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm a fan of your podcast, so I'm excited that you're speaking with me on my podcast. Like, what a thrill. Now, Nicole, for 2 decades, you spent years navigating high-level corporate decisions and managing multi-million-dollar accounts. You were known as a golden child in the corporate world. What did you love about that career?
I absolutely love so my background, and it's so cute you said that too. I love it so much. My background is really working with executives and streamlining their processes. So I
Mm,
always did my job to try to make the lives easier of the companies and the people that I work with. So I always brought it down to what can I do to reduce friction, reduce frustration, reduce the parts of the job that you probably hate. So it's so interesting because it's very similar and it's like two sides to the same coin in terms of the corporate world and the metaphysical work, because a lot of that is the same. But what I really, really enjoyed is just taking very complex problems and processes and really simplifying them and making them easier for the employees that are doing their job. And it was a win-win because it would also make the companies a lot more profitable as well. That job, I used to say, if I could just take 1% of the benefits, I would be a billionaire by now. That would be absolutely amazing.
well, with a job that really required a lot of data driven, you were really an analytical person. Back then, did you think that intuition could be as valuable as data in those decision making processes?
To be honest with you, Donna, not at all. I didn't even know I had intuition, right? Like, and I'm not even exaggerating here because I had absolutely no idea. Every decision I made or I worked with the executives to make were all based on data. So as soon as a project
Mm,
started, we would collect data on what was the current state. When we made an improvement, we would collect data on whether this is successful or not. I
right.
had zero tools in my belt in terms of intuition. And actually, when I discovered that I was a medium and that I could
Hmm.
connect with spirit, it's like I had to start from zero to learn even what intuition is and how to follow it.
Well, it's fascinating because, we'll get to that part of the story because that's such a rich moment in your life. But what pulled you actually to go into that field in the first place? Because it carries over into your more metaphysical world.
In terms of,
Working with data and
oh,
working with people. No,
yeah,
I know I'm going back in the history here because I'm always
okay.
drawn to initially what was the pull to have you do that? Because you obviously did it really well.
I always loved math and science and computers,
Mm.
and it just seemed like a very natural flow for me. I remember being in 3rd grade, and this is dating myself a little bit, but being in 3rd grade and we got our first computer, and we had Prodigy on that computer, and we had the dial up, right? We had all of these things, right? I was
I
making
can
web
hear it
pages,
now.
right? Awesome
Yeah.
sound effect.
Uh-huh.
I was making web pages as a girl in elementary school. I loved it. And then I was
Mhm.
programming in high school. When I got to college and they put me in all of these beginner information technology classes, I tested out of almost every single one of them because I'd been doing this
Amazing.
for years and years and years. So for me, and it's maybe more growing up with the technology, Donabelle, it
Mm.
was just a natural progression for me to just move from technology into a technology major. And then once I got into an organization as an IT major, working as
Mm.
a quality analyst, a business analyst, and a project manager, I learned about Six Sigma, which is essentially the methodology, the organizations that use data to make decisions. And I
Mhm.
immediately went over to the person that was in charge of the Six Sigma group and I said, I want to do this job. What do I need to do to get over here? And I pretty much harassed him for about 2 years until he hired me.
That's persistence. That's that is definitely persistence.
Mhm,
And you obviously found your lane because there's something about systems that really appeals to you
mhm.
and finding a way to navigate within the systems to really bring out the true potential of that project, that staff person, that business. And it's fascinating because I know that it now carries over into your spiritual work, but I just want to talk about you wrote a chapter
Mhm.
in the book, The Intuitive Entrepreneur Deeper Connections for Soul Driven Success by Deb DeSalle and 20 other authors. And your title was Empowered Soul Attunement Transformative Healing for Instant Confidence and Clarity. And in this chapter, Nicole, you mention a pivotal moment that changed the course of your career and your life path. Can you tell us about that, please?
Absolutely. In the throes of COVID, when I was working from home as a consultant and also sitting next to my kindergartner son, so he was 8 at the time, or actually he was 5 at the time, but he would tell me there were shadow people in the basement while we were working next to each other side by side in this basement. And I laughed it off for literally 3 years. I'm not even underestimating this. It was 3 years because when he turned 8, and he was so afraid of being
Mm,
alone in our house, and our house is not old. There's
mm,
no reason for him to be afraid. It was not logical at his age that he should have these fears anymore. And so
right.
I went to a medium because I had exhausted all other options. And I said, What am I supposed to do about this? He's seeing shadow people. Do you think it's actually shadow people? And she said, Yes, he's actually seeing spirit with his eyes. So why don't you just go figure it out? Go figure out how to fix it.
Oh, you
Because
go figure it out.
yeah. And I
Okay.
was like, What do you mean? And she's like, What? You didn't know you were a medium? And I said, No, I had no idea I was a medium. But
Mm. Wow.
right. So
I mean,
that
what
turned
what went through your mind when she said that? Because, this was so out of your philosophy even with
right.
the other work.
And I would say that I did love mediumship. And I had been
Mm,
watching all of the mediumship shows since I was a little girl. I had been to mediums before. I mean, obviously, she's my medium. So I've been to them before. And so I have the utmost respect for this work. And I think it's just number one, so cool. It's so
mm-hmm.
cool to be
It's
able to
just,
continue the connection on the other side. So when she told me that I was a medium, I stopped in my tracks. Everything went dark. And I'm like, what? Say that again. And she's like, what? You didn't know? You didn't know you were a medium? I'm like, no, I had no freaking clue I was a medium. So she
mm,
offered a mentorship with me for 8 weeks and I immediately signed up.
mm.
And in the first session I had with her, there were all the dead people. I was reading the dead people and I was like, oh, okay, there you are. I just needed to learn how. So it's like I had been on this veil, like living in this veiled moment where it
Mm.
was so real to me that it wasn't actually separate from me. And that's kind of me understanding. all of this stuff is that I always thought it was separate from me, but it's not. It's right there, right for the taking. And it's unbelievable how easy some of this work is.
And it sounds like it was almost like a switch, like
Hmm.
you just turn the switch on because you're saying it's right there.
Yeah.
And to just have insight into how to get there
Hmm.
was a whole new, I mean, literally an awakening for you, and
Yeah.
how miraculous and exciting. And so, how did you work through that with your son?
I was teaching him as I was learning. Yeah, it's crazy, but I was teaching him how to talk to the spirits. I was teaching him that these are not demons, these are not bad people, right? These are our family that are hanging out with us in our house. So I was teaching him while I was learning, which
Mm,
was so unreal because he has such a natural aptitude for it. I'm sure at some point I did too, but there's that time frame when kids are just more open to this stuff. So I would
right.
teach him how to talk to these departed loved ones, and he would tell me their names and he would tell me their stories, right? And he would be able to tell me things that I couldn't get as a beginner medium. But it was
Hmm.
it was absolutely wild for him to experience that and have those conversations, and for me to validate for him that you're not crazy. These are your departed loved ones. This is your uncle that you never met that died before you were born, and he's the one that hangs out with you at night.
Gosh. So, I mean, that's such a life altering moment, and I can only imagine. I mean, for him, I think it was probably such a welcoming thing to have
Yeah.
your mom actually embrace this part of you and give you support and a safety net. Because most people, when they discover this aspect about themselves, it's quite daunting and terrifying if you don't have a mentor sometimes, because you just don't understand
Right.
what's happening. And so, how did you present this to your family? Because this is kind of an interesting transition. You laugh.
I'm laughing because I grew up Roman Catholic. I grew up
Same.
right.
Hmm.
I grew up as an altar girl. So oh yeah. I mean, I wasn't just a Catholic. I was fully indoctrinated, right?
Oh,
My
you had the
last name
merch.
right,
Wow, okay,
right, and
yeah,
I married
okay.
into a family whose last name was Pope, right? So it was so interesting because everyone around me is ultra religious. I would say my family was a little more lax thanks to
Mm.
a lot of the church scandals, etcetera, that have gone on,
Yes.
over here in Massachusetts, right? So I think ours
Yes.
had a foundation of the church, but they were much more open to seeing mediumship, seeing the other perspective. My mom personally loves mediumship as well, so she was super excited about it. My husband's side of the family, though, I mean, it was
Ooh.
not good. Over time, they've accepted it, but what was so
Mhm,
interesting about me kind of coming out of this spiritual closet
mhm,
is when say that I come from 20 years of integrity in my work and being the best at what I do. People
mhm,
know that about me. So, me as somebody who loves my job as an executive, works with executives of top companies across the country, they say,
mhm.
well, if you think it's true, then it must be true. And so
Right.
there was un this unconditional love and support from so many of my family and friends because of how they know me and how I
Mm.
approach life. And that was, honest to God, probably the only thing that saved me in terms of many of my relationships. I can't imagine people that are hopping into this that don't have that background or don't have that integrity or that track record. And they're trying to convince people or talk to people about this stuff is real.
It really is a challenge for
Hmm.
many. And I think the reason why I'm bringing this podcast to light is to demystify that and normalize it, because essentially we all have this capability to some degree. It's just more focused in others. And I'm curious, do you have it in your family? Did you do any research going back?
Oh, that's a really good question. Based on readings I've had, I'm going to say yes. I actually trained my mom how to be a medium.
Oh my gosh, you're converting the excellent. No,
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful how you're sharing this. Yes.
And I think this is such a modality. This work is so healing. I don't and it's so interesting because Donna there are so many spiritual egos in this space, and it's really hard to navigate around a lot of them because some of them
It's
are
true.
really good at hiding it. And so I come from a space of just wanting people to see what is out there, what is beyond the social constructs, the social norms that
Mm.
we all exist in, that we're literally trained to do in terms of thoughts, behaviors, patterns, everything else. And so I like to just use this as an opportunity for people to see outside of the typical
Mhm.
world that we've been taught, that has been pressed on us, so that they can see other opportunities, other potential, other unconditional love, and realize that none of this stuff, I'm sorry, it doesn't really matter, right? It's a game.
Right, right.
We're living in
It's the
the
matrix.
matrix. Yeah.
It's the Well, it's interesting because, we were talking about systems prior, and that's your playground.
Mhm.
And essentially what you're dealing with is with other people's belief systems, right? And how those are formed and how those then create the reality that we exist in. And when you understand that there's more to that, it really opens up the possibilities of connection, of just understanding our place in the world and our connection to other people. It's quite a profound experience. Now, you have many tools under your belt, and so I'd like to speak a little bit about, many people are unfamiliar with the Akashic Records and what they can offer. First of all, what are they? And how do you use this tool for personal growth to guide clients through their own spiritual and professional challenges?
The Akashic Records is my favorite. It is my favorite modality. I like to call evidential mediumship is kind of this gateway spiritual drug that gets people interested, realizing that this is true, and it kind of hooks them a little bit. So whenever
Mhm.
I'm having clients and they've already know that the spirit world exists, I always suggest, why don't you try an Akashic Records reading? Because these are essentially very in-depth soul readings that you have unlimited access to information. And that's
Mm.
essentially what the Akashic Records are. They are referenced in every spiritual text, and this is essentially the book of your soul. And when we access the Akashic Records, we go into a very high vibrational state, and it's kind of like Jeopardy. A lot of the things you want to find out, you have to ask in the form of a question, but they will give you whatever information is best for you at this time, whether it's understanding past lives, current lives, soul contracts, any karma that you have to work through, etc., whatever you want to call it if you don't want to call it karma. And then also what are potential future paths that you can take based on current decisions that you have to make. So I like to describe it almost as Google for your soul or Chat GPT for your soul. You can ask anything
That's
and
quite
they'll
the
give you whatever you
context.
need to know. And what blows my mind about the Akashic Records is if you are open to receiving the intuitive or the guidance from them, it really is a game changer in terms of changing your perspective about things and also healing things. And when I talk about
Mhm.
healing things, I was just learning the Akashic Records, reading a book, and they say to go in the records and go to the source of a problem that you have. So I said, great, cool, let me do that. Let me go to the source of my constant nagging anxiety that I have no idea where this comes from. There's no reason for me to have this really deep unseated anxiety that never ever lets up. And so I said, show me the past life where this happened. And I was a farmer when I couldn't, no matter what I did, my crops died, my family died because there was no food. And I went through this whole vision, this whole lifetime of me trying to save everybody else. And I was unable to save anybody despite my hardest efforts. And when I asked
Mm.
them to clear that energy and heal the anxiousness, it was gone
Mhm.
in a matter of seconds, and it has never come back.
Wow. I mean,
Unbelievable.
unbelievable. And that's just you working through your records. Now, a lot of people who are listening to this podcast aren't necessarily professional intuitives. When you start saying they, how does one even access the Akashic Records? I know going through a professional obviously helps make that easier, but it seems like such an abstract concept.
It really does. But we all have the ability to access our own records. They are part of us, they are part of our soul, it is part of our history as souls in the spirit world, etc. So when I talk about when I'm talking to the Akasha Records, it is essentially a team of people in the records that help you access your information, give you the information that you're requesting. So it can be your departed loved ones, it could be masters, it could be teachers, and then there's also lords of the records, which are the ones you don't really talk to too much, but essentially think of it as a team in the Akashic Records that is responsible for the integrity and accuracy and completeness of the
Mm.
of the book of your soul. But in
Mm.
terms of actually accessing your own records, you can do this any way that works for you. So you can actually set the intention, and intention is everything in this work. So set the intention of, I want to connect to my Akashic records and I want to learn this. And you can either do a meditation, you can do a automatic journaling exercise, you can ask for it to come in your dreams, you can use cards, and it's really just setting the intention to tap into the story of this problem or this relationship, and they will give you that information because everyone has the right to access their own records.
So is it just past or is it more all throughout your lifetimes? I think most people are focused on the present. And if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think many people struggle to see the big picture, especially where they're in the thick of change or some sort of transition. And so, how can accessing the Akashic Records provide them that broader understanding or insight? Because it's such a critical time in their lives. And this is such a unconventional way, if you will, to help them in that way.
It really is. So the records can access everything past, present, future. And I, like you just said, I truly advise people to work in the present state, in the present lifetime first, because
Mm.
there's a whole lot of lifetimes in the Akashic records. And if you aren't dealing with your trauma and the issues you currently have in your life, do not go to past lives because
Mm.
newsflash, you die in every single one of them. It's not pleasant.
I'll cut to the chase. You all die. You die.
Right, right. Most of the time, it's not the best lifetime, right? Because they're not going to give you the lifetime where everything was hunky dory, typically. They're not going to give you the
Mm.
lifetime where everything was smooth. They're going to give you the lifetime where you learn the biggest lessons. And if you aren't healed and ready for that message, don't go back there because
Mm.
you're going to make your brain spin even more. So, in terms of the current life, I completely agree. So, the Akashic Records allows you to, I'm going to say, rise above the current situation and the current energy to give you the understanding of why. And as I'm saying this out loud, I'm realizing the similarities between my corporate world and this because I would go into the whys in my corporate world. I would collect the data and then go into the root cause of, well, why is this happening? And that's the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records are, let me understand why this is happening. If I'm having a bad relationship with my mother, let me go and figure out what was our soul contract? What was the purpose of it? And I have
Mm.
to tell you, that's where I started. I started in the Akashic Records trying to understand, love her, but my mom, a little narcissistic. I'm going to put it out there, right? And that's okay because she has her own demons and this is how she learned love. And so it's not any fault of hers, but I had to understand if we chose our lives, why did I choose this mother that couldn't give me love, couldn't give me love in the way that I needed it, that didn't support
Mm.
me, that constantly criticized me. This was another moment that healed me in 10 seconds in the record. And they
Mm.
said, you chose her because you needed to be independent. You needed to learn that you could raise
Ah.
yourself in this lifetime. And that
Mm.
sets you on the trajectory for people to be able to raise and mother and take care of themselves as well. So the lesson that I picked for her was to help me so that I could help other people with that same problem as I got older. So it gives you this whole big perspective. And then how can you blame her after that? You're like, well, you played your job really well, mom. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Yes. I think that's what happens when you gain insight into these parts of yourself, because then you're able to see the people in your life in a different light. And I
Hmm.
probably have to say, doing this work, I also had a moment where I realized the people in my family are serving particular purposes for my own personal growth. And that's an eye opener. You have this appreciation for that instead of why did you do this instead. You know what I mean? It's such a profound understanding that then you can go into your world and carry that with you. It's a beautiful transformation. So, as an evidential medium now,
Hmm.
you receive messages from spirit, but how do you navigate the balance between communicating those messages and then the practical needs of your clients?
Oh, it's a really good question. I think that I need to meet everybody where they're at. So
Mm.
and to be honest with you, I let spirit channel whatever is the right information to give to my client at that time. So, in terms of all of this work, I literally leave it up to spirit and I say, you need to give me what is the best and highest good for them at this point. So, even though my clients might come to me in deep grief,
Mm.
what spirit gives me is going to be dependent on what they need. So sometimes spirit will just bring forward evidence of, that they're around, who they were, give messages of love, give them healing, let them know that there's nothing they could have done. to change the outcome of this, let them know that they're with XYZ on the other side. So a lot of some of my readings will be more, let's talk about the current energy, the current moment. Let's talk about whatever we need to talk about right now for you to heal. And then
Mm,
others that come to me, it's more fun because
mm,
they already believe that the spirit world exists. So they'll come in for an evidential reading, evidential mediumship reading, and spirit will be like, okay, so here's these 5 pieces of evidence. You already know that they're there. You already believe it. So they literally skip over the entire reading. They're like, we're just going to talk for 45 minutes about you and advice for you and what you need to do on your path. So
mm.
I really just leave it up to spirit and let them guide a lot of these sessions.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes our loved ones still retain their essence when
Yes.
they're gone, and sometimes they retain their same belief systems to some degree. I mean, I think once they progress and understand where their thoughts are coming from. But I'm curious because when I'm doing work myself, I'm always like, anything that they present is really a guide, and that you really have your own free will to choose what you'd like to do. So, how do you incorporate that?
There's so many complexities, right? And
Really?
you're completely right. And I like to remind everybody that this is free will and a lot of the
Mhm.
information they're giving is based on current energies and most likely outcomes. And they
Mm,
have every right to change their decisions, change their path every single time. 100% correct. The other thing that I would mention is that these souls that come through in these readings, they're not necessarily the same, I'm going to say incarnation as they were,
mm,
right? It's like
mhm,
my team describes it to me as a sunflower.
mm,
So each of our incarnations is a petal on the sunflower. And once we're done with our lifetime, that petal gets absorbed into the center of the sunflower. So it's the center of the sunflower, the soul that is coming through in these readings, and they're presenting as the petal, but they have
mm,
infinite knowledge, wisdom, love for a lot of my clients. And sometimes this is fine because who they were in this lifetime was unconditionally loving. And so the messages and evidence all feel like they're coming from that incarnation, which is perfect. I love that for them. But for the abusive ones, for the ones that are
mm,
toxic, I
mhm,
always have to break it down and explain that we're going to give evidence of who they were, that is not who they are anymore. So you need to realize that this is what we go through when we move into the spirit world. We are cleaned and absolved of our biases, of our limitations, of our flaws, of our toxicity, and they get to see what life was like for you being the
mm,
recipient of the toxic energy, behaviors, actions that they did to you. And so
mm.
I always have to kind of explain that to them, that what is going to come through in the message is more at a soul level, a healed level, but always from the intention of unconditional love and healing for them.
I think that's really important, and I love that sunflower metaphor, it's beautiful. Can you share maybe a particular case where your client was going through a major decision and they had sort of an epiphany during the reading?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say, let me see if there's a specific example. I have so many of them, but of course,
I
being put on the
figured you would.
spot, right? And I want to stick with evidential mediumship. So let me see. Okay, there's one. Okay. So, what was one that happened very recently was a woman. So, I read her sister. And then she came to me, and her reading was about her dad who had departed rather young. He definitely before his time, but she was really the one who took care of him. And
Mm,
she was the one that decided once he actually passed, she was like, hands off, I'm not planning anything. Right. And she felt so alone and so upset because her sisters really judged her for being hands off about the funeral, even though she had already taken care of her dad all through his sickness. She was the primary
mm,
caregiver. And so her dad essentially came through to say, you did everything right. Thank you so much for taking care of me. There's nothing that you could have done differently. And the dad actually was coming through with humor and laughter about how ridiculous the situation was with
mm.
her sisters over the fact of his passing, the circumstances of planning the wake, planning the funeral. And it just gave her such a different perspective that he was laughing about it. He thought it was so funny that they were so pissed off at her about it. And she was just like, it's totally fine. And he got to essentially validate her when she had no validation received whatsoever from any of the family members. So that really helped her heal a lot.
Oh,
But I think
really?
what was
Yeah.
the most interesting part of that reading is at the very beginning where her grandfather came through. And her
Mm,
grandfather, she had never met. but I was able to provide evidence of who he was, give information, and so we could pin him down and who he was. And she feels like a fish out of water in her family. She feels like
Mm,
very unique soul. No one sees things the way she does. I wouldn't say she's the black sheep, but she has those personality traits that's very different. She doesn't fit into the family whatsoever. And so the
mm.
grandfather came through to say, "You're just like me. This
Wow.
is not unique to you. This is unique to people in the family, and you are meant to push the buttons. You are meant to challenge. You are meant to be different in the family. So be different in the family." And that validation for her, hearing
Mm.
from her grandfather, who she never met, but always heard that she was similar to, and be able to get that validation, I think was life changing for her.
Well, and what a weight too, because she's probably carrying this weight around her. It's like, what's wrong with me? Why am
Yeah.
I so different? And to know that, well, first of all, know that that's a purpose for her in her family circle, but
Mhm.
that she was just like her grandfather. This work is just so healing in so many ways, and we keep saying healing because it really is a part of us that we don't understand that just carries over into all aspects of our lives. And when we come to an understanding about why it's there, it just lifts us and makes us lighter. I really feel that. And how beautiful for you to bring those two people in for her. I mean, was this shortly after he passed? Her father passed? Hmm.
Within 3 months, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, that's still pretty recent. So what is your thought actually about working with people who have passed recently within weeks? What do you tell people who want to connect that soon?
That spirit is going to come through regardless. Spirit is always there. There is no time on the other side. They're able to come through right away after their passing. And I have had people come through literally right away after they passed, like in a matter of minutes. And they're perfectly fine because there's no time on the other side. So, what I tell
Yeah.
my clients are, if you are okay coming to a medium and you don't have expectations, and you're not super heavy in your grief, then yes, trust that you can go to the medium, but you have to assess, are there certain things that you want them to say, expect them to talk about healing that you need, because those create blocks. It's not that they're not going to come through, but those create blocks, energetic blocks, and that makes it a lot more difficult to read the departed loved ones and get you what you want, because you're expecting a certain thing, and that creates energetic friction, and that makes the reading a lot more difficult to do. So as long as you can come in without expectations and
Mm,
without really really heavy deep emotions, then you're going to be
mhm.
absolutely fine in a reading.
I mean, I think most people just say, "Oh, I should have probably waited," but it really is reliant upon where you are in the grief stage
Mhm.
because those things are all tied together. And, it just makes it easier for spirit to deliver messages that will actually impact you that you're able to receive. So I'm always curious about how different mediums work in that way. And I'm curious, now that your son is aware of his gifts and now that you're aware of who have you discovered in your home that he was observing?
Everybody. I have so many dead people, Donabelle, like so many departed relatives on all sides. I come from a
Mhm.
pretty big family. So, yeah, so my departed mother-in-law hangs out kind of upstairs in the hallway between all the bedrooms. It was my uncle, his great uncle, that would hang out in his room and protect him, because he was a very
Mm,
protective man in this lifetime, right? So he
right.
was the one who protected the entire family. So it doesn't surprise me at all that he comes and protects him at night. All of the grandparents, like you name it, they're I have my husband's grandfather that hangs out in the stairs right near the front door. And it's so interesting to me because I'm sure that they move around, but when I see
Mhm,
them, they tend to be in a lot of the same places. So this might be a
mhm.
me problem, but yeah, they're all around. Yep.
Babies in the corner all the time.
Isn't that isn't that true though? Because
It's
I'm talking about how my son can see spirit. My daughter can hear them. And yeah, so she's 9
Oh.
now. And now she says, she comes home and saying, "Mom, there was funny handwriting on my paper today, and no one else could see it." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean, kiddo?" And she draws this old English looking, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, you got friends at school that know you can talk to them and see them."
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Mhm.
Wow, so young, so young. And how lucky for them to have a mother who could mentor them through that whole process. Because I think sometimes when people realize they have this, they're sort of left in the dark. Literally and figuratively. I always suggest getting mentors, getting teachers, and learning as much as you can about this whole subject. Now, I'm curious how you were drawn to shamanic practice in your work. First, explain what shamanic mediumship is, if you will. Thank you.
For me, it is just tying into the elements of the earth. So I use it to help anchor a lot of the energy that I get from readings, especially because what I found working with the Akashic Records is I'm kind of up in the ether quite a bit, and the information can be absolutely wonderful, but it isn't always grounded in reality. So they might give me some practical tools, but for the most part, I like to use the shamanic to balance the Akashic and also uncover, because a lot of, like I said, a lot of the Akashic work is you have to ask the question. What if you don't know what the
Mm.
question is? And so I use the shamanic tools to help kind of uncover some of that unconscious programming, the unconscious things that are going on. So for me, it's just additional tools to get at a lot of the same root problems, healing opportunities, etc. So that's kind of I use it just as an additional tool set for me.
So what are some of the tools for people who don't know what shamanism is?
Oh, absolutely. So you essentially work with nature and Mother Earth. That is the basis of shamanism. So that includes
Mhm.
power animals, essentially spirit guides you have here in the physical world, animals that support you, lend you their power so you can use their skills and tools. You
Mhm.
can also do soul journeys. You can understand where my soul has gone. And to me, I feel like shamanic work is much more accessible than the Akashic work personally,
Mm.
just
Mhm.
because we are here in the physical world. Mother Nature does want us to work with her. I mean, we see this in the seasons, we see this in the elements. And so for me, taking people on a soul journey, I mean, essentially it's a guided meditation, and a lot of people
Mm.
can do guided meditation. So you're able to see some of your past lives without me having to do this. To me, it's like, I'm going to say it. People will hate me for it, but it's like QHHT that's accessible for everybody. It's being able to access your past lives without having to pay hundreds of dollars for an additional practitioner to do it for you. So I love how accessible shamanic work is, but I think my favorite tool is really the soul retrievals.
Mm.
And that's essentially the idea that as you go through traumatic events in your lifetime, there's parts of your soul, because we are a soul here, but there's parts of your soul that decides to peace out. They're like, this is too much. I'm gonna go back to the spirit world. I'm all set with this. This was traumatic. So this could be,
Mm.
disassociation or other kind of things that the medical terms would put on it, right? But what
Mhm.
soul journeys, soul retrievals are is essentially going and finding those lost pieces of your soul that pieced out because of trauma and healing those and bringing that energy back to you and making yourself whole again and realizing that it's not you, that there was the circumstances and that you have the power and you don't need to give your power away.
Well, and perhaps maybe another way of looking at it is sometimes just a personal block. And what does that block look like? And when these blocks manifest in their daily life or professional work, working with these shamanic practices is a really profound way to sort of move through that and then open up access into why that block is impeding your growth and getting in your way. If you're able to go see a block, like physically, virtually, whatever, and move it aside or at least understand it and then move through it, how powerful is that?
Absolutely. And there's so many uses for the shamanic tools. And I love that. And I think that's a wonderful example. And cord cutting is a similar one. How do you get rid of these
Mm.
cords between these literally energetic ties that are proven
Mm.
by physics between you and
Mhm.
other people so that you can be free of toxic relationships, toxic energy? And why do you still think about that ex after 5 years? So these are tools that you can use to really just eliminate old energy and
Mm.
eliminate false narratives so that you can become your best self.
Absolutely. Now, as someone who blends business and spiritual practices, how do you personally use your mediumship or Akashic skills to stay grounded and focused during periods of significant change in your own life?
Oh, goodness. I think what's so funny about this work is we are not necessarily the best readers for ourselves. It's like the plumber
Mm.
has to hire, or like the landscaper, their yard looks like not great.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
very similar here. But I would say, in terms of my own transitory periods, I really rely on spirit to show me the way. And I've started to use, I'm going to say, more of my intuition in helping me decide how to get through some of these moments and
Mhm.
less using my head to push through these moments. Because what I've found is that when I resort back to using my old ways of moving through these transitions, because I feel uncomfortable, so I come from a business world. So that means I'm going to
Mhm.
solve it. I'm going to put my head in it. I'm going to use logic. I'm going to push through it come hell or high water. and
Mhm.
I will get it done, right? And yeah, I
Mhm.
can do that, but that often results in more work than I need to do. It results in more problems, unexpected problems, because now I've probably ruffled a few feathers, right? So now I really let spirit lead the way, and I trust that whatever comes to me at certain points is supposed to come to me at certain points. And I really kind of release the reins, so to speak, and let them show me
Mhm.
what I'm supposed to do. And then balancing that tactical hands on trying to actually fix the problem once I know what the decision is. So I guess I
Mhm.
rely on spirit more to help me with making those decisions, kind of the strategy overall arching. And then I use
Right.
my brain and my logic that I'm so good at doing once that
Mhm.
decision's made to execute on that.
Well, and two, using your intuition is really almost a very physical part too. So if when people say I'm trusting my gut, you're trusting your own inner guide as well. So if you're noticing that there's struggle maybe doing this aspect, perhaps it's not the time to be doing that right now. Whereas something that just flows easier, that's just the way. And really being open and receptive and just listening to that is a big step in this whole process. Now, for most people in high stakes environments, people often question their intuition under pressure. Do you have a specific tool or technique that you would use to tell them to sharpen their intuitive senses, especially when the stakes are so high?
I would tell them to pay attention to their body
Mm,
because our bodies don't lie. So move out of the energy of because once you start using your brain, it's all over.
mm,
Your ego, your brain is going to override your intuition every time because you're used to this. This is how most
mm,
people operate and function. So I
mhm,
always like to say when you are coming into this high stakes, move it down. Move the energy down into your heart, into your gut, whatever
mhm.
feels right for you, and really lean into the feeling of that decision. Does that feel like a heck yes, or does that feel like a heck no? Or does it feel somewhere in between? Because that means it's not a heck yes, right? And that
Mm,
means that maybe you need to do a little bit more thinking or waiting and not making a decision yet. And so I really push people to move it down into their body and see
mm.
how it feels. And then I always, this is the number one thing that drives me nuts. And I keep forgetting it myself. The right aligned decisions feel calm. They
Yes.
don't they don't scream, they don't have giant freak out moments, they don't
Mhm,
have a lot of energy or emotions associated with it. Intuitive moments feel quiet, they feel calm,
mm,
they feel
mhm,
like in flow, and honestly you don't always understand why, like falling in love, let's just put it out there, falling in
mm,
love, right?
mhm,
When you
mhm,
finally meet that person, yeah, you might have a little butterflies, but they should feel calm, they should feel like your energy, they should feel relaxed and comfortable, and they shouldn't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to, I'm flushed, I have to go out, I have to act this way, right? Because that's not living in alignment. So I always like to
yeah,
say bring it to you, and if it feels calm and if it feels good, then that's the one for you.
I love that. It's so true because you just know. You just know it feels right. So on the other spectrum, for young professionals and aspiring leaders, what would you say to them about the importance of developing intuition alongside the traditional business acumen?
It will take you everywhere if you can
Mm,
develop your intuition and
mm,
honestly, psychic abilities, because what I was completely unaware of is that my entire career, I was actually using my intuition. I was actually tapping into people's energies and knowing what they needed, where was their discomfort. And like I did this all subconsciously in the back of my head.
mm,
And there's a reason why I ended up being top in my career because
mhm,
I was using these tools. I could inherently walk in a room, know who the problem people were, how to address them, what I needed to do there. And so leaning into your intuition and learning that skill is
mm,
immensely invaluable because there's so many people within, I'm going to say, the corporate environment, anything that uses logic and brains, any organization, any industry, most of the people are not tapped into their intuition and they don't know how to read the room. And as all of these, I'm going to say, future generations come up that have been
mhm,
raised on the technology, raised on the iPads, right?
mm.
And don't have those social skills, this is going to be your leading edge. This is going to be your secret sauce that is going to allow you to be super successful, super fast. Because if you can go into a room and know exactly who's good, who's going to help you progress your career, what do they value, you can tailor your approach to whoever you want. So it's almost like learn the rules of the game so that you can
Mhm.
jump rope with them
Mhm.
and break
Yeah.
the rules and have that competitive advantage to make your life so much easier, so much faster.
And what a skill. That's a skill. And that's something that when you hone it, it just becomes just another tool in the way in which you just navigate the world. So, Nicole, what's next for you? Is there anything exciting on the horizon that you're particularly excited about?
Oh my goodness. I have lots of little plans. I'm throwing out a lot of different ideas right now, and I'm in this, I'm going to say, transitory period myself. I know there's probably more books coming eventually. I know that
Nice.
there's probably workshops and retreats coming eventually, classes, etc. Most recently I have launched my mediumship mastermind for just developing mediums who just need a place to come and practice and have continuing education, because it drives me crazy that there's a lot of these classes that start and stop, and really, what we need is an ongoing place to just go and develop. So I
Mhm.
essentially create a lot of my programs and my classes for what did I need when I was learning these things. So, and the wonderful thing about me, Donnabelle, is I can never sit still. I can't. I am in a constant state of change. So
Mm.
I literally just take whatever spirit is bringing me as a download, as intuition, and just roll with it. And so this, I think, is my really fun stage, because everything in my life has always been very strategically planned. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to go with the flow right now, see where it takes me. And then I'm sure there'll be a
Mhm.
point where I strategically plan again. But I would say the best way to keep in touch and figure out what I'm doing and what I'm releasing is just follow me on the socials, because it always goes out there.
So how do people follow you on the socials? Where can they connect with you?
So I would say all of the socials. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So I'm out there as Medium Nicole. On Instagram, it's Medium Nicole A. There was already another Medium Nicole. But the best place to hop is just my website, mediumnicole.com. And it has all the links out there for that.
Oh my gosh. Nicole Pope, thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences and definitely unique perspective. You're clearly someone who has successfully merged analytical rigor with spiritual wisdom. And I'm sure a lot of listeners will have plenty to explore after hearing this segment. So I love that you've given people tools as well, because we can all use a little guidance in exploring this part of ourselves. And amazing work you do. I thank you for all of that.
Thank you so much for having me, Donnabelle. This has been amazing. And I know this podcast is going to kill it in the future. So great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. I hope something from today's conversation stayed with you or gave you a new way to look at things. That awareness, that pause, that's where things start to shift. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. You can learn more about my work and what's coming up at sonorouslight.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at To Hum Is Human. Until next time, keep humming.